Hello there and welcome to class. My name is Scott Schultz and I will be your test teacher. This course will prepare you for a number of different exams. We have personal lines, commercial lines, and property and casualty that we're going to be covering in the context of this course to prepare you to pass your licensing exam on your first attempt. Now, as you know, what we have within the course, we have these study plans that we recommend you pick one out and you follow that. That's going to be your success path, is that study plan. So make sure that you print that out and you're going to follow that and do everything. That's your checklist to success. Check everything off that list before you go down and take your exam. That'll ensure that you pass your exam on your first attempt. Thank you for selecting us as your pre-licensed vendor. And we're going to start this course off with what's referred to as general insurance. Now, you see in the heading in this section, it's section 2. So you're probably wondering, well, where the heck's section 1? We get that question a lot. And the first thing we'll point out is this course is state specific. And as we'll learn, insurance is regulated primarily at the state level. So there's a department or division of insurance at the state level, and the head of the department or division of insurance is referred to as the insurance commissioner or director, and they're responsible for enforcing the insurance laws. When you get your license, it's a state license. And since insurance is regulated at the state level, every state, their laws regulating insurance are a little bit different. So section 1 within your course is the information that covers the state-specific laws that you have. And then as we move forward into the general course content, we start with section 2. So you'll cover section 1 later on, and it relates to the state laws. So what you're going to be learning here throughout this course is the language of insurance. And I say that because it's very similar to learning a new language. It doesn't matter if you have any background in insurance, and in fact, if you do have background in insurance and maybe work somewhere and maybe let your license lapse and now you're coming back, forget everything you know, because whatever you learned at your insurance company was specific to that company and the products that they sell. Well, what we cover here in this course is general. So they're only testing the general knowledge that they want an individual to attain before getting licensed to go out and sell insurance to the general public. So when we talk about policies, we're talking about the general policies. Yeah, they may be different from insurance company to an insurance company, as we'll learn, but if you were licensed before, forget everything you know. You need to know what we're going to cover in this course and apply that knowledge to your licensing exam to make sure that you pass. And as I said, this is a basic course. If you don't have any insurance knowledge, we're teaching to you. And we're going to be building foundation, we're going to be building blocks here, starting with this first section and moving forward. As you'll see, things will start to build upon themselves. Now, it's a knowledge-based exam, and there's thousands of test questions on that test. I don't know which questions exactly you're going to get. You don't know which questions exactly you're going to get. What I do know, though, is what the exam outline looks like. So we provide that to you in your course. And that's going to tell you, for example, from general insurance, it will tell you how many questions you're going to have on your exam. Now, each exam's different. Personal lines, commercial lines, property and casualty, and the state that you're in as far as how many questions you'll have out of this section. So you'll want to focus on that exam outline because that's going to tell you where the highest concentration of questions are. And of course, you're going to want to know that information better than, say, a section that maybe has 2 or 3 test questions on it. So focus your studying accordingly. Now, we're going to start learning the language of insurance in this first section, general insurance, and we're going to start off with some terms that you need to know. Okay, we have first, our first term is insurer. Our second term is insured. And our third term is producer, also known as agent. Okay, so we're going to go through what these terms are. And here we have insurer. The first one is the insurance company. Second one, the insured, is the person covered by the insurance. This third definition we have here is you. So that's the most important one in my opinion, and possibly in yours as well. So going back here, the insurer is the insurance company providing coverage. They don't say insurance company though on the exam. They say insurer, and you're supposed to know that that term means the insurance company. Now, they also, instead of saying the person covered by the insurance, they will say insured. Now, as you'll notice here, we only have 2-letter difference between the two here. So it's really important that you know the difference between the insurer and the insured, because depending on which one they're asking about on the exam, the answer is going to be different. And of course, they're going to have both answers there to try and trip you up. So the insurer, well, think of it this way. Do you have auto insurance? Most likely, if you own a car or lease a car, you have auto insurance because most states require that you carry it. Who is the insurance company that you have it through? Well, that's your insurer. And you're the one covered under the policy. That means you're the insured. Now, going a little further down here. Okay, say that you operate an insurance company. Okay, you're really good about, designing the policies. And you're going to hire underwriters. The underwriter's going to work on salary. They're going to evaluate the risk. You hire these people called actuaries, and those actuaries, they're statisticians basically. And what they do is they work with statistics, and they can determine based on past losses how many future losses they expect to have, and they can put a number on exactly how much you can charge to try and make a profit. Okay, so you have all that in place as an insurance company. So you're going to go out like gangbusters and you're going to start selling your product. How are you going to sell it? They need you. You are the single most important integral aspect of profitability from an insurance company, because without you, they can't sell their products. So you are a producer or agent. Those terms are synonymous. And we're going to have a lot of terms that are synonymous as we learn throughout this program. So you are the producer/agent. You represent the insurer. Okay, so we'll learn about this more in detail later, but you're supposed to hold your client's best interest at heart, of course, but by contract, you represent the insurer. In other words, who pays you? Not your client. The insurance company pays you. They pay you a commission on sale, generally, right? Of course, you could be maybe a salaried representative as a producer. That's referred to as a captive agent, where maybe you're on salary, maybe you get salary and a commission, but you represent one insurance company. Or maybe you're an independent agent where you can represent as many companies as you want. You're still getting paid by the insurance company, and that's who you have a contract with. That's who you represent. Okay, so a few definitions there, which are very important to start out the discussions here. But now we've got to talk about insurance, what insurance is. And in order to do so, we have to learn about a new definition, which is called risk. And risk is basically defined as the chance of loss. Okay, the uncertainty or chance of loss. That's what risk is. Now, why is risk so important? Because if risk wasn't present, nobody would buy insurance. It's the chance of loss, the uncertainty of loss. I could die. On my way home from this filming session in my car, I could get in a car accident and die. I may not. That's a risk. If I want to provide protection against that risk, and what the risk is that I'm going to die, and then there's going to be a loss, a financial loss to my family. But there would also be, if I got in a car accident and I didn't die, but say my car gets damaged. Well, that's a risk, right? Because I'm going to have to pay to fix it. That's a financial risk that I would have. And so that risk there causes me to want to go out and purchase auto insurance, doesn't it? So we have this term risk. And beyond that, we have two subcategories of risk. We have one which is referred to as a pure risk, and one down here which is referred to as a speculative risk. So you have to know all these definitions, and we'll get to the book in a second here. This is kind of like a little bit of an introduction here. Okay, a pure risk is a risk situation which has a chance of loss only, no gain. This type of risk, pure risk, is insurable. Conversely, down here, speculative risk is a risk situation where there is a chance of loss and a potential for gain. The best example of a speculative risk, which they might ask about on the exam, gambling. You go to Vegas, you take $1,000. You could come back with $1 million. You could come back with 0, like most people do. Well, that's a speculative risk. A risk situation where there's a chance of loss and also a potential for gain. Speculative risks, not insurable. Okay, so we've learned a lot of things here. So we have potential 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different test questions just on what we've covered up here on the board. So I'll mark them out. Question number 1, definition of risk, chance of loss or uncertainty of loss. Test question number 2, definition of a pure risk, risk situation where there's a chance of loss only. Test question number 3, definition of speculative risk, risk situation where there's a chance of loss and a chance for gain. Question number 4, what type of risk is insurable? Pure risk. Question number 5, what type of risk is not insurable? Speculative risk. Test question number 6, what's an example of a speculative risk? Gambling. Chance of loss, no chance for gain. If speculative risk was insurable, don't you think you'd see insurance agents in casinos walking around on the floor? So, I put that $100 bill down on my blackjack hand, and an agent comes up to me and says, hey, that's pretty risky. You want to buy insurance for that? No, you don't see it. Why? Because speculative risks are not insurable. Okay, so moving on a little bit further before we get into the book. What is the definition then of insurance? Well, there's really a long legal definition for it, and it's in the book, so we'll just highlight that first sentence. Test question. Social device for spreading the chance of financial loss among a large number of people. But here's what the definition basically is. It's the transfer of pure risk. Transfer from who? Well, you have the insurer, and you have down here the insured. Who's transferring the risk? The insured's transferring the risk to the insurer. So when you buy insurance, what does the insurance company issue to you showing you that there is, in fact, a contract there? What's it referred to as? They issue a policy. Now, in order for them to issue a policy, what do they want from you? They want money. And what's that money you pay for your insurance referred to as? It's a premium. Okay, so the policy is the legal contract. It states what type of coverage it is, who the insurance company is, how much the coverage amount is, all that good stuff. So sometimes people say it's defined as something that the insured never reads. I mean, even if you did read it, you're probably not going to understand anything that it said. But this is how it works. You buy insurance, you're transferring your pure risk to the insurance company. So let's say we buy auto insurance. The risk is that we'll get involved in an accident, our car gets damaged, or maybe we're negligent and we damage somebody else's property or injure somebody. We cause bodily injury or property damage. Okay, so we buy an auto policy and we pay our premium for that. Say we get involved in an accident and we have a loss, which is defined as a reduction in the value of an asset generally. Now, in order to notify the insurance company that we have a loss, what do we have to submit to them? A claim. Okay, so remember, this is the introduction to insurance we're talking about here. There's much more to learn about, but I think this is a good point to take a look in the book just to make sure that we're kind of on track here. And this is how the course is going to be presented. I'm going to discuss some things on the board. We'll give some examples. We'll kind of talk back and forth, but we have to make sure we cover everything in this book, which, keep in mind, was written to be right in line with the exam outline that you're going to have your questions based on. So we need to make sure we cover everything in here. So on page 1, concepts is the heading. We talked about that first sentence. Highlight that. Essentially, it's a transfer of pure risk to the insurance company in return for the premium that you pay. In the next paragraph, the insurance company or insurer, highlight that, receives relatively small amounts of money referred to as premium, highlight that, from each of the large number of people buying insurance. A large uncertain loss is traded in this way for a small certain loss, the premium. So the small certain loss is right here. This is what you know you have to pay, your premium. It's due usually monthly. The uncertain loss is related to if you have a claim. So, you know, it's uncertain, but it could be a very, very large loss. Next paragraph. The agreement between the insurer and the insured, who is the person who is covered by the insurance, is established in a legal document referred to as a contract of insurance or highlight star policy. The insurer promises to pay the insured according to the terms of the loss of the policy if a loss occurs. Loss highlight is defined as a reduction of the value of an asset. To be paid for a loss, the insured must notify the insurer by making highlight a claim. Next paragraph, risk, test question, is defined as the possibility, uncertainty that a loss may occur, and is the reason that people buy insurance. Next paragraph, speculative risk, such as gambling, highlight this definition, creates a risk situation, offers the opportunity for gain, as well as the possibility of loss. It is this type of risk that insurance will not cover. Next paragraph, pure risk is the type of risk the insurers accept. Pure risk, there's a chance of loss only with no potential for gain. Okay, and that covers it there. So we go from these concepts we talked about to the next concept, which is risk management. Okay, risk management, and we're going to learn some new terms here. Okay, new definitions. Hazard. A hazard's defined as something that increases the risk, or something that increases the chance of loss. So, test question on what the definition is. And the insurance company is very concerned if there are any hazards present, because those hazards would increase the potential that they're going to have to pay a claim out, correct? And so we have the definition of hazard. We have three hazards here. First one is a physical hazard, and you're going to have test questions on this as well. Okay, physical hazard is something that is physical. So let's say we're talking about fire insurance on a property, and you have a client that's storing gas in their garage. Now, this isn't just regular gas, but they do racing on the weekend. So this is like high octane, highly flammable and explosive gasoline that they're storing in 50-gallon drums in their garage. The presence of that gas in the garage is definitely going to increase the chance that that house will catch on fire and burn down. That's a physical hazard, something that increases the risk. And we have number two, a moral hazard. Okay, a moral hazard is defined as somebody who lies, cheats, and steals. You've all run across them throughout your life. Those cheaters, they're out there everywhere. You know, I was first exposed to it when I was a kid, you know, I don't know, third, fourth grade, playing Monopoly with my buddies. There was this one kid, his name was Jordan. He cheated, always cheated. He would always find a way to try and cheat to win the game. We play Marco Polo out in the swimming pool. He's the one with his eyes open. You never could trust the guy. He was a moral hazard. He lies, cheats, steals. Those guys that are in those movies, Oceans 11, 12, 13, 15, 20, however many they made. Moral hazards. Very hard to detect though. Because if you're the agent and you're out there, you know, you're meeting with this client, you've never met them before, this is your first experience with them, you're asking them all these questions for the application, and how do you know if they're lying or not? I mean, obviously a physical hazard's easy to detect because you're doing, you know, walking around a site survey of their property. You say, hey, you know, I see all those 50-gallon drums in your garage, what's in there? Oh, it's high-octane racing fuel. Oh, okay, well, this is more difficult to detect. Moral hazard. And then we have a morale hazard, which is somebody who is a careless individual, careless client. So no pride of ownership in the property. So this one's, again, maybe a little bit easier to detect for yourself, but you go to their house, and you're gonna, hopefully sell them a policy and get the application all filled out. So you go to their house, and their house, they say, hey, our house is the one, we've got 3 cars in the front yard. They're up on, cinder blocks. And you can see in the backyard over the fence that maybe this person's a hoarder. They have it's like a junkyard in their backyard. And you saw those 3 cars in the front yard, just the roofs of them, because the grass in the front yard was so tall, you couldn't see the bottom of the car. Morale hazard, careless client. So physical, moral, and morale. And then the definition of hazard, again, there, 4 test questions that you possibly could have just from that area. So looking at the bottom of the page, a hazard is defined as something that increases the risk or chance of loss. So highlight that. 3 types of hazards. Physical hazard. They give you another example here in the book. Dead tree next to your house that could blow over during the next windstorm, causing damage to your roof. So what is the insurance company going to do if that's present? They will ask you to cut the tree down. My in-laws, they had a cabin in northern Arizona, and that was the situation. There was a huge tree there that was dead, could have fallen right over on their house. So in order to get the property insurance, the insurance company told them they had to cut it down in order to get it, or they weren't going to write the policy. Okay, so some other examples of physical hazards: oily rags, wet leaves on a sidewalk, ice on a sidewalk. 2, moral hazard, presented by a dishonest client who intentionally damages their own property. 3, morale hazard, such as presented by a careless client or one with no pride of ownership in their property. Okay, and then we go into the next paragraph. We learn a super, super important definition that we've got to know, and that is a peril. We're going to hear this word a million times throughout this course. So if you have this question on the exam and you miss it, shame on you, because this should be the easiest one that you have. A peril is defined as a cause of loss, such as death, if we're talking about life insurance, fire, we're talking about property insurance, wind, hail. These are all examples of perils, causes of loss. Some property insurance policies are named peril, covering only those perils that are listed in the policy, while others are all risk, covering all perils except for those excluded. Okay, so let's focus on that just a bit. So we learned about peril as a cause of loss. Now, if I buy a policy, okay, so I buy a property policy, and I want to know what perils are covered in my policy. The insurance company can write the policy in one of 2 ways. They can write it as a named or specified peril policy, or they can write it as an open peril or all risk. So we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but this is pretty important stuff that we're learning here. So we learned the definition of a peril. Now when you buy a policy, it will either be a named peril or an open peril policy. And these terms are synonymous. Named peril or specified peril means the same thing. Open peril or all risk means the same thing. It's providing coverage 2 different ways. Essentially, it's semantics. So when you buy the policy, if you have a named or specified peril policy and you want to know what's covered, you look in the policy because they list the perils covered, or they name them, or they specify them in the policy. And if a peril is not listed in your policy, it's not covered. Conversely, an open peril or all risk policy, where do you look to find out what's covered? What's referred to, new term for us, as the exclusions. Because open peril or all risk policies cover all perils except those that are excluded. Now, what's an exclusion? Something that's never covered. So we're just looking in different places. The better policy of the 2, generally, as we'll learn, is going to be open peril or all risk because they cover more things. Now, a question for you right now. We just learned about this term exclusions. Which policy do you think would have more exclusions? A named peril policy or an all-risk policy? Which one? They both have exclusions, but which one do you think has more? Correct answer here would be open peril. Why? Because they have to exclude everything they don't want to cover, and if they don't list it as an exclusion, it's going to be covered. Okay, so up here, they just had to name the perils. If it wasn't a named peril, it's not covered. Well, down here, if they don't exclude it, it's covered. So these open peril or all-risk policies are going to have many more exclusions than a name or specified peril policy. So we continue on to the bottom of the page, that next or last sentence. A loss, generally define a reduction in the value of the insured property caused by an insured peril, such as fire. So going back a little bit when we were talking about, let's see, these hazards. Okay, so I said earlier my in-laws, you know, they had that tree that was dying and it was going to fall over on their house. So the insurance company said, you got to cut that down if you want to buy a policy from us. Does that mean my in-laws had to cut the tree down and buy the policy from them? No. They could go out and shop any insurance company they want to. Some may require that they cut it down, some may not. But the point I'm trying to make is insurance companies can discriminate based upon hazards that are present. Okay, in that instance they said, hey, we're not going to write the policy unless you cut the tree down, but of course my in-laws have the right of choice of going to shop somewhere else, and maybe somebody will cover it without having them cut it down. On to the next page, let's see, first paragraph. And so one page down and however many minutes that was. So you're thinking, man, this course is going to be what? 400 hours long? No, it speeds up as we kind of go along, but we're going slow. This is a foundation. I want to make sure you get these things. Top of the page. Risk managers evaluate risk for loss frequency, severity, and potential dollar losses over time. Once the loss exposure is identified and analyzed, best techniques for dealing with them must be examined. An exposure highlight is something that could result in a loss. Next paragraph, first sentence, there are several ways to manage risk. All right, so what we're going to talk about here is referred to as risk management. Okay, so let's say that our risk that we're concerned about is being involved in an auto accident. Okay, so once we define that risk, that there's going to be a chance of loss that we may be involved in an auto accident, we can figure out how we're going to manage that risk because we have a few choices of what we want to do. Starting in the next paragraph, there are several ways to manage risk. A risk may be retained. First choice we have, we could retain the risk. And when we retain the risk, we can self-insure. So that's an example of retaining the risk. You self-insure. You don't go out and buy insurance, but you decide you're going to remain financially responsible for a loss should it occur. That's retaining the risk. Another way that you retain portion of the risk is through a deductible. Now we're learning a new term here, which you're probably already familiar with. Most insurance policies, property insurance policies, have deductibles. So let's say the deductible's, $250. And it's usually what's referred to as a per occurrence deductible, or you can think per claim. That $250 is something you have to pay even if you buy insurance. So test question, who pays the deductible? The insured, the person covered by the insurance. What happens if we want to increase this deductible? What happens to our premium? If we increase our deductible, our premium for our coverage is going to go down because it's more of the risk that we're retaining as the insured. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's option one. We could retain the risk. And if we're going to 100% retain the risk, we self-insure. Well, that's pretty risky because if I get involved in a car accident, I can hit a car full of nuns and, total their car, and they all have to go to the hospital and get air vac'd. And I could be, on the hook for $1 million. Very risky. That's my first choice, retaining the risk. Second choice we see that we have here in the book is to avoid the risk. Okay, so I want to avoid, if I want to totally avoid the risk of being involved in a car accident and having it be my fault, sell my car. I get one of those Razor scooters, and I'm going to ride my Razor scooter to work. That's avoiding the risk, and that's a choice that I have. So that's another risk management technique. Third choice we have, we can reduce the risk. Okay, so we reduce the risk by sharpening our driving skills. So we take a defensive driving class. And a lot of times, if you willingly do this, the insurance company will give you a discount on your premium for your auto insurance. Why? Because you're reducing the chance that you're going to be involved in an auto accident. Okay? So reducing the risk. And the fourth one, and most important, is transfer the risk. There's two different ways we can do this. Number one, we can sue. Number two, and the reason we're all here, is to buy insurance.